Greetings everybody and welcome back to another ranking all video here on the Ruthless Metal channel. Today we're going to rank all the studio albums from a band called Cirith Ungol. Cirith Ungol is one of the oldest metal bands around, and their story began in the early 70s, but it took them a decade until they released their debut album Frost and Fire in 1981. Cirith Ungol, or Cirith Ungol as some like to call them, are from Ventura, California. They had a long break from the early 90s up until 2015, so even though they've been around forever, they haven't released more than 6 full studio albums. And now it's time for me to rank those 6 studio albums from the worst to the best, so let's do this. In 6th place we have 2023's Dark Parade, and it kind of feels like I threw this album under the bus a bit when putting it last, because I think that Dark Parade is a great album. It's actually one of the best albums of 2023, but it's kind of hard for me to put this album above the albums that I've lived with for 25 years or so. Very few bands from the 80s sounds as vital as Cirith Ungol in 2023. Tim Baker's screeching voice hasn't aged, and that's a miracle because he's turning 70 soon. He also has the perhaps most unique sounding voice in metal, and I've always been a fan of his style. The same can be said about Cirith Ungol. They've always had a very unique and hard to define sound. Cirith Ungol's sound can best be described as some sort of mix between classic American power metal, doom metal and epic heavy metal stirred into one pot. And since I love all those styles, Cirith Ungol's music fits like a glove for me personally. The band has certainly not reinvented themselves on Dark Parade. It's just brilliant heavy metal through and through. Great melodic solos and soul-crushing riffs. Sacrifice, Velocity, SCP, Sailors on the Seas of Fate. There's just no duds here. Dark Parade is just a great record, so it saddens me to put it last, because I think that all Cirith Ungol records are great in their own way. Next. In 5th place we got Forever Black, which was the first album of the comeback era, the second being the aforementioned Dark Parade. Unlike most bands that I used to like, Cirith Ungol's comeback albums are actually brilliant. When the ominous intro track The Call leads into Legion's Arise, you just know that Cirith Ungol means business. On the album Paradise Lost, Cirith Ungol sung about joining the Legions, and now it's time for the Legions to rise again, so that was a cool way to bind it all together with their past. The next song, The Frostmourne's Dream, is also a call to the past, since it was inspired by Fritz Lieber's work, just like Frost and Fire was some 40 years ago. Night Demon's bassist Jarvis Leatherby is the only new guy in the lineup, and he does a solid job. I also want to do a shout out to Greg Lindstrom's guitar play. He's a master of his craft and one of the most underrated metal guitarists out there. For me, Forever Black and Dark Parade are just 2 examples how metal should sound like in this modern age. Just stick to what you guys did back in the 80s and don't try to update the sound too much, and the fans will stick by you. So I'm glad that Cirith Ungol finally got some mainstream recognition, since they've been one of my favorite bands for decades now. Next. In 4th place I put their debut album Frost and Fire. Maybe a bit low on the rank you might think, but for me they hadn't fully developed their sound on this record. Sure, they've been around for a long time, but when this album came out it still had some vibes of the 70s lingering on. It's a rather accessible record, even though it's quite a strange one as well. The lyrics are great, the ingenuity and how they were able to put together such a metallic sounding album when there were more or less no metal scene in the US is quite remarkable. Frost and Fire, I'm Alive and A Little Fire are classic metal songs that will live on forever. And the cover art that features Michael Whelan's artwork for Michael Moorcock's Stormbringer is just epic. Elric is the name of the albino anti-hero on the cover, and this series of sword and sorcery styled stories had a huge influence on Cirith Ungol. Not only for putting Elric on every album cover, but the lyrics are also heavily influenced by Michael Moorcock's work. Greg Lindstrom's guitar sound is quite sharp on this record, so it kinda cuts through the music like a knife in butter, but I also think that is what makes Cirith Ungol's debut album unique. Frost and Fire is a legendary album and it deserves your attention. Next. In third place we got One Foot in Hell. It's 1986 and thrash metal was getting more popular by the day, and you can hear that Cirith Ungol has taken notice of that here, because One Foot in Hell is perhaps their heaviest and thrashiest record, but it's no Rain in Blood, that's for sure. It's still very much Cirith Ungol sounding, but just a little more muscles behind it. It kinda reminds me of the direction that Manilla Road started taking during the same time. Despite being a fan of the band for decades, I've probably listened more to this record in the last 5 years than I've done in the previous 20 years. Simply because this album ain't talked about that much, and it kinda falls in the shadow of their King of the Dead album that came out just 2 years earlier. Blood and Iron, Chaos Descends, Doomed Planet, I mean, come on, those songs are just excellent. And this might not be the most innovative stuff by 86, but I think that this is one of the more underrated albums from that year. You don't always have to reinvent what works, even if you can hear a more aggressive tone on this album. One Foot in Hell is a great record that I almost put in second place, but after thinking about it some more, I had to put Paradise Lost in second place. Paradise Lost is one of the better albums of the 90s. It took the band 5 years to get this album out, and perhaps the hype for Cirith Ungol's brand of doomy heavy metal was over, since alternative metal and grunge was about to take over. So Paradise Lost was released without much fanfare. And you must also remember that guitarist Jerry Fogle and bassist Michael Vujea had left the band, and in came Jim Barraza and Vernon Green. Jerry Fogle also passed away a few years later, so rest in peace. Paradise Lost is more commercial sounding than One Foot in Hell, or at least more accessible. Join the Legions is such a metal anthem, I love it. And some might think that the Troll is a bit cheesy, but I love that one as well. But the most known song from this album must be the Arthur Brown cover of Fire. It kinda makes sense for Cirith Ungol to cover it due to the duality between Frost and Fire that has been a recurring topic for the band. However, the band's drummer Robert Garven has publicly denounced the album for its bad production. And yeah, it's more accessible or commercial sounding, but I don't think it's that bad. Go It Alone is a bit cheesy of course, but otherwise I think it's a real strong record. Tim Baker's screeching vocals are still there, even if there had been some rotation going on within the band's lineup. Next. The number one Cirith Ungol album is in my opinion 1984's King of the Dead. It's probably in my top 5 most listened to metal albums of all time. I just can't get enough of it. I just love everything about this record. The lyrical themes, the production, the quirkiness of the record and how unique it was. For some it wasn't fast enough to be exciting, it wasn't doomy enough for the doom metal fans, and it was too weird for the Maiden and Priest fans, but I always took a liking to this record because I think it's so masterfully crafted. The heavily low fidelity, fuss-driven character of the guitar tone and the looseness of the arrangement has all the hallmarks of a jam band that managed to stumble into being the missing link between Black Sabbath of yesteryear and the ascendant US power metal sound represented in Omen and Jag Panzer. Cirith Ungol managed to create a metal masterpiece simply by being unique and toying with ideas that really no other band on the planet was doing. During a time of Iron Maiden and Priest replicas, Cirith Ungol instead went on and created a more epic sound, a doomier and slower sound with sword and sorcery inspired art and lyrics. King of the Dead is such a quirky sounding album, that clunking bass and the lead guitar that almost sounds like a synthesizer. And on top of that, once again, the vocals of Tim Baker, a man that sounds like he was actually on fire while singing, in a good way of course. Atom Smasher, Black Machine, King of the Dead are beyond great, just incredible songs. We also got Death of the Sun, a song that appeared on the very first Metal Massacre compilation that featured a certain Metallica. So let's have a look at my full rank, and here it is. I might have been a bit harsh on the new records to put them last, but it's just hard to compete with the classics. And perhaps One Foot in Hell or Frost and Fire should go above Paradise Lost. These lists aren't completely set in stone. Sometimes I feel like listening to Frost and Fire more than Paradise Lost, but I guess that's how it is when you make lists like this. And I'm of course curious to hear about your favorite Cirith Ungol albums down below. How would you rank them? Let me know. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, otherwise the Atom Smasher will get to you. And also a big thanks to my Patreon supporters for sticking by the channel, so check the Patreon link down below if you wanna join the legions. And let me know what band I should rank in the next episode of Rank 'Em All. And that's all for now, so thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.